Get more with Geico. 1 week away from the Major League Baseball trade deadline. A couple teams looking to get a whole lot more. Look, it's not fun being on some of the worst teams in all of baseball, like the White Sox and the Marlins. However, if you are good players like these guys right here, like a Garrett Crochet, Jazz Chisholm, you could potentially go from being on one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball to one of the best teams and a potential World Series contender. That is what we get with the trade deadline. For more on that, let's welcome in our MLB insider, Jim Bowden here. Let's start with starting pitchers here. This is a need for every single team year-round. What starting pitchers could we see be on the move?
Well, we have to start with the Chicago White Sox, Amanda, because both Garrett Crochet and Eric Fedde will probably be donning new uniforms come next Tuesday. Garrett Crochet is probably going to be the most talented starter that's going to be traded at the deadline, and the suitors have lined up. Now, I'm being told the most likely landing spots as of today for him are either the Baltimore Orioles, Los Angeles Dodgers, or Houston Astros. But there are many teams that are in on him, and that includes the Braves and the Padres. Now, in terms of Eric Fedde, my knowledge that I've been given from sources is that both the Milwaukee Brewers and St. Louis Cardinals seem to be the front runners to be able to land him. Both of them have had a lot of conversations with White Sox GM Chris Getz. Now, some other guys that will get moved. Let's talk about the Colorado Rockies, Cal Quantrill and Austin Gomber, both of which GM Bill Schmidt has been putting on the trade block. And the Toronto Blue Jays southpaw, you say Kikuchi, I say Kikuchi. The Minnesota Twins have talked at length with Toronto about him. But the most underrated, undervalued trade starter out there is Jack Flaherty of the Tigers. If the Tigers move him, the prospect cost will be a lot less than it will be some of these other starters, and he may end up with more impact. He's having a comeback year. But those are the most likely starters that are going to be dealt from what my sources have told me between now and Tuesday.
I cannot read or say Kikuchi's name without hearing your voice in my head with that line, Jim Bowden. Those are the starting pitchers. Let's go to some relief pitchers, some closers here. Look, it's no shock teams like the Marlins. You already talked about a couple Marlins players there on the move, including Tanner Scott. What's the market like out there for him? Where could he potentially land?
Yeah, every contender has called Miami about Tanner Scott. He's the best left-handed reliever available on the market. He has 16 saves this year, a staggering 1.27 ERA for the Miami Marlins, and I think every single team is out there. I think that Baltimore Orioles and New York Yankees have been pounding the drum extremely hard for both of them. The Yankees really could use another option than Clay Holmes at the back end of the bullpen. They love the fit. They've also talked to the Marlins about both Jazz Chisholm and Jake Burger if they were to make it a bigger package than Scott. The Houston Astros have touched base with him. The Texas Rangers would love to get him. That's another team that's made a lot of phone calls, and so have the Los Angeles Dodgers. Other closers that could get moved, Kyle Finnegan of the Washington Nationals. 28 saves, a 2.32 ERA. Mike Rizzo has made it very clear, the GM of Washington, that he's not looking to trade him. He controls him for one more year. But if he gets the right offer, he will get moved. Remember, Washington is building for 2025 and beyond, more so than this year, even though they're in a pennant race. And so they could absolutely move Finnegan. And finally, the surprise name that I heard late last night is Camilo Doval of the San Francisco Giants. Apparently, they're getting tired of his lack of command or control. He's averaged 5.9 walks per 9 innings this year to go along with the 12.1 strikeouts per 9. But I'm hearing that they're open to dealing him as well. So Tanner Scott and Finnegan, the most likely to be moved, but Doval could be the one we're not expecting.
That's a surprise name there. What about when it comes to bats? Look, we've talked about the Marlins through this. You get Jazz Chisholm there, not maybe so much of a surprise for him. What other names are teams looking for to shore up those lineups?
Yeah, look, there's not a lot of bats that are going to be available from what I'm hearing. So you've got Luis Robert of the White Sox, but I'm hearing it's just as likely that he stays a White Sox than he gets traded. And I'm not hearing a lot of momentum. The Phillies and the Pirates and Mariners are three teams that have talked to Chris Getz about Luis Robert, but there's absolutely no indication that there's traction of any kind of deal there. So that's one to watch. I think Chisholm does get moved. Now, the teams that are in on Chisholm include the Philadelphia Phillies, who would play him in center field. It includes the New York Yankees, who would put him at second base. It includes the Pittsburgh Pirates, who would put him in center field. And it includes the Mariners, but who knows where they would put him. It could be in the left field. It could be second base. I don't know. But those are the teams that are in on him. Now, the other names that you were asking about Brent Rooker, power bat with Oakland. He's only a DH, can play a little left, maybe a little first, but there's warts on him. Lane Thomas of the Washington Nationals can crush left-handed pitching, but he doesn't hit right-handed pitching. He catches the ball in front of him. He can't catch the balls behind him. He's more of a platoon outfielder. If he gets traded, Philadelphia's the best landing spot because he can platoon with Brandon Marsh at left field. But the asking price is high. They control him for another year. But I think it makes sense for them to trade him. The Angels, Taylor Ward, Mark Canha of the Tigers, and Josh Bell of the Marlins are the other names I'm being told by GMs throughout this industry that they expect will be moved at the deadline. The Red Sox are looking for a right-handed hitting first baseman to platoon until Tristan Casas comes back, so they could be in play on Canha or Bell as well.
Jim, we love talking to you about front office business because, of course, that's where you spent so much of your career. When it comes to front offices that are under the most pressure, and I thought this was really interesting, you gave us a list. You have the obvious teams like the White Sox, like the Blue Jays. They're not doing bad. Of course, they're under pressure. But then you also get teams like the Yankees. We even mentioned the Dodgers, the Mariners, who just had a historic collapse over the past 6 weeks or so. Why are you looking at teams like that?
Yeah, I'm looking at teams like that because, well, first of all, when you talk about the Yankees, there's always going to be that kind of pressure. There's pressure on Brian Cashman every year, and it's always World Series or bust if you're a Yankee fan and if you're Hal Steinbrenner, the owner. So, I mean, Brian's got to go get some pieces here. I mean, this lineup isn't good enough. He really needs a corner infielder if he can get one, preferably a third baseman. He needs bullpen help. He could use another starter as well, or at least starting pitching depth. A lot of pressure under him. This is going to be a close race with the Orioles, and you don't want to finish in second place and make a wild card berth where you're 2 out of 3 and you go home. So you really want to win this division. So a lot of pressure on them. The Dodgers starting pitching, Amanda, you and I talked yesterday on CBS. It's very fragile, a lot of injuries. They paid $1 billion for 2 players last year, $1 billion. One of them's on the injured list. You don't spend that kind of money, and it is World Series or bust for them. A lot of pressure on them. And for the Miami Marlins, look, there's pressure to trade and rebuild. It's been a disastrous year for them. And there's no more pressure also than Seattle's Jerry Dipoto, because when you have the starting pitching that can win the World Series and you don't put enough offense around it, that's a bad job. They got to fix it, and they got to fix it at the deadline.
When it comes to the wild card race, we've been talking about this for a couple weeks now, especially in the National League. It's going to be absolutely insane. Teams in that wild card race right now, all but 2 within 4.5 games of one another. So we wanted to ask you this. Teams in the wild card race that could actually potentially be sellers saying, look, we're not going to go into this. Let's just get rid of some of these pieces. Who are you looking at?
Hey, that's a great question, Amanda, because if I were running a team, if I'm within 4.5 games at the deadline, I'm buying. I'm not even going to consider selling. I don't care that I'm 4 games under 500. I think the only 2 teams that shouldn't be buying in the National League are the Miami Marlins and Colorado Rockies. But that being said, that's not been the case. According to my GM sources, the Chicago Cubs are out there selling. It's not that they may not sell and buy at the same time, but they have offered starting pitcher Jamison Tyone. They have shopped some of their veteran power bats as well. So, look, they know they've got holes behind the plate where they've had talks with the Rockies about Elias Diaz. They know they have holes in the bullpen, but I don't think they believe in this team, so they could absolutely sell. The San Francisco Giants and Tampa Bay Rays, of course, the American League, but those are 2 other teams that have said they're going to wait till Sunday. And they're going to see how they play this week, and they're going to make the call Sunday. But they have prepared to go either way, to buy or sell. So you look at teams like the Rays, Cubs, and Giants, they're all in a pennant race. But all 3 could be massive sellers a week from today.
Jim, it's going to be interesting to see what transpires over the next week. You said you think Monday, the day before the deadline, we're going to see a lot of action, so we'll make sure to check in with you then and as the week rolls along. Taking a look at some of the games you got coming up tonight. Hey, you got to go to the very bottom there. Subway Series going down. Mets at Yankees. Yankees, of course, the favorite. But as Jim pointed out, that's a front office that is always under pressure. We'll see how the Yankees do as we roll closer to October.